It should not be the case that the White House press spokesperson sounds exactly like the worst Karen at Dollar General. But she does.
Karoline Leavitt is really at the center of Maher's criticism here. His problem isn't simply that she's attacking Democrats, that's politics. It's the way she turns an entire political party into a collection of terrorists, criminals, and illegal immigrants. Coming from the White House press secretary, that kind of language carries a very different weight. Maher's point is simple. When rhetoric that extreme starts coming from the White House podium, it stops sounding like partisan trash talk and starts sounding like the government itself is treating millions of Americans as the enemy. And Maher wasn't the only one questioning that kind of rhetoric. Over on CNN, Abby Phillip took up the very same controversy, focusing on what it means when a White House press secretary describes tens of millions of Americans in terms normally reserved for terrorists, criminals, and illegal immigrants. Watch how that conversation unfolded on Newsnight.
Populations, you see it every day. Energy and around this country have worked very hard to let violent criminals out on the streets. Where is the lie in what is being said by Karoline Leavitt? This is where the energy is on the left.
The energy,
violent, illegal aliens, violent criminals. That's the energy. That's what you see.
The energy is behind protecting people's rights. It's behind not having citizens citizens, Americans.
What about illegal aliens being rounded up by ICE?
Many Democrats have said we got the immigration issue wrong and we need to fix it. Perhaps maybe in Congress, but we know that won't happen because they aren't even working right now. But people are protesting Americans being zip-tied, being detained without having their rights protected. I'm not saying that is not that is not the Democratic Party saying that let all illegal people or criminals run free. That is not what the Democratic Party is saying.
Those are the policies? Those are your...
No, they are not.
I mean, you have prosecutors and judges all over this country that have let violent criminal after violent criminal out on the streets. And then what do? They commit other violent crimes in city after city after city.
What does that have to do with people exercising their rights to protest? I really want to understand. I mean, there are going to be millions of people probably out on the street.
Here in New York City, sponsor this rally, well, look, I mean, if Democrats want to embrace having the Communist Party, be my guest, respectfully, and I hear what you're saying, but where is the energy in the Democratic Party? You see energy around protecting illegal...
Abby Phillip gets straight to the weakness in Leavitt's argument. She wasn't simply criticizing Zohran Mamdani or some fringe faction on the far left. She took one controversy and stretched it across the entire Democratic base. Coming from the White House press secretary, that matters. You can't warn that demonizing political opponents is dangerous, then describe millions of Americans as terrorists and criminals. Once the language reaches that point, it stops being ordinary political criticism and starts turning an entire opposition party into an enemy. That criticism didn't appear out of nowhere. Maher had already zeroed in on the same contradiction earlier in his monologue, not by pretending Democrats have no problems, but by asking whether Leavitt's sweeping description of an entire political party bears any resemblance to reality. Here's where he begins tearing that claim apart.
But having your press secretary say that the Democratic Party's main constituency is made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals, that's deranged. Democrats... Democrats have many flaws, and I point them out frequently on this show, but unstoppable super monsters? These are people who let their 10-year-old pick the restaurant, okay?
Maher isn't pretending the Democratic Party is spotless. He openly admits there are activists who embrace extreme causes and that Democrats made serious mistakes on immigration. The problem is what Karoline Leavitt does with those examples. She takes the most controversial people on the political fringe and uses them to define an entire party of tens of millions of voters. That's the distinction Maher keeps hammering home. Acknowledging extremists is one thing. Pretending they represent everyone who disagrees with you is something else entirely. If Maher's description sounds exaggerated, there's an easy way to judge it. Listen to Karoline Leavitt's own words. This is the statement that sparked the backlash in the first place, and once you hear exactly how she describes the Democratic Party, it becomes much clearer why Maher and others reacted so strongly.
The Democrat Party's main constituency are made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals. That is who the Democrat Party is catering to, not the Trump administration and not the White House and not the Republican Party, who is standing up for law-abiding Americans, not just across the country, but around the world. And that
Leavitt's own words make the controversy hard to brush aside. She was responding to a specific dispute involving Zohran Mamdani, yet within seconds the target became the entire Democratic Party. Calling out one politician is normal political combat. Portraying a massive voting coalition as terrorists, illegal immigrants, and violent criminals is something entirely different. For a White House press secretary, the language carries even more weight because she isn't speaking from the sidelines. She's speaking as one of the administration's most visible official voices. That's exactly why Maher's criticism lands so sharply. Leavitt may be the latest example, but Maher's argument goes beyond one press secretary. He sees the same pattern running through conservative rhetoric for years, warnings that Democrats aren't merely political opponents, but an existential threat waiting to destroy the country. To make that point, he turns to one prediction from the Biden era that sounds especially revealing in hindsight.
Grip. You're paranoid. You're fucking paranoid. I'm telling you, you know I don't lie to you. Listen to this. Conservative cartoonist Scott Adams said in 2020 that if Biden were elected, it would mean that there is a good chance you will be dead within a year. Republicans will be hunted. Okay, but Biden was elected, and it wasn't that long ago, like less than a year, when he headed the government with his people heading the Justice Department. And he didn't hunt you dead, Scott.
Maher's point here is almost embarrassingly simple. The nightmare was predicted, the election happened, and the nightmare never came. Scott Adams warned that a Biden victory could leave Republicans hunted or even dead within a year. Biden then spent 4 years in office, with Democrats controlling the executive branch, and that supposed purge never materialized. That's why Maher treats the claim as more than bad political analysis. It's a perfect example of how fear can be repeated so aggressively that eventually the prediction matters less than keeping the audience terrified. The criticism of Karoline Leavitt hasn't always stayed focused on her political rhetoric. Over on The View, Joy Behar took the conversation in a far more personal direction, questioning how much Leavitt's appearance may have mattered to Donald Trump when she was chosen for the job. That sparked a controversy of its own and showed just how quickly the debate around Leavitt could move from what she says to why she's sitting behind that podium in the first place.
I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10.
Something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Mm-hmm. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they
clearly had plenty to challenge Leavitt on. But Joy Behar took the argument somewhere far more personal. Suggesting that she landed the job because Trump considers her a 10 may get a reaction, but it also risks distracting from the much stronger questions about what Leavitt actually says from the White House podium. Her rhetoric, her claims, and the way she represents the administration are all fair game. Once the criticism turns into speculation about her looks, though, it gives her defenders an easy escape from the substance, and suddenly the controversy becomes about the attack on Leavitt instead of the words Leavitt herself has to defend. Karoline Leavitt has become one of the most polarizing voices in the Trump White House, but the real issue here goes beyond whether people like her style or dislike her politics. The deeper question is what happens when the person speaking from the White House podium starts describing millions of political opponents in language normally reserved for terrorists and criminals. Bill Maher mocked it. Abby Phillip challenged the logic behind it. The View turned the controversy into an even broader debate over Leavitt herself. Yet beneath all the noise, one point remains difficult to ignore. The words of a White House press secretary carry institutional weight. Political attacks are nothing new, and both parties have their extremes. Still, once sweeping accusations begin replacing actual arguments, the line between hardball politics and outright demonization gets dangerously thin. Leavitt can defend her record, her rhetoric, and the administration she represents, but those words also deserve scrutiny. Because when the message comes from the White House, it is no longer just another partisan soundbite. It becomes part of how the government chooses to describe its own political opposition.